Greetings, fellow Fright Fiends, and thanks for joining me here at Boogeyman Ben's Horror Zone. Just taking a little break right now from doing videos because I'm working on a book. But my friend Sean Erschen tagged me in this recent video that he did, and it's called the Favorite of the Decade Horror Tag, and it goes from 1920s up until this decade. Favorite horror film to come out of each of those decades. This was started by Random Horror, my friend Ross over there, and I hope everyone enjoys this, and thanks again, Sean, for tagging me. The 1920s. For my favorite horror film to come out of the 1920s is The Phantom of the Opera, 1925, directed by Rupert Gillian and starring Lon Chaney. I still think that is such an iconic look for The Phantom of the Opera. Lon Chaney was a master performer. The makeup in that is just fantastic, and it's one of my favorite horror films, so absolutely love that. So 1925's Phantom of the Opera. For 1930s, I'm going to have to go with The Invisible Man, directed by James Whale and starring Claude Rains. That movie is absolutely fantastic. The effects that they were able to pull off, and Claude Rains' manic performance as the Invisible Man, it has always been one of the highlights. 1940s is going to have to be The Wolfman, directed by George Wagner, and of course starring Lon Chaney Jr., easily my favorite of the Universal monsters. I've always loved the Wolfman, loved the makeup and everything in this. The look of the Wolfman is iconic, and such a tragic story, and Lon Chaney Jr. is so terrific in the main role. Just absolutely fantastic film. 1950s is going to have to be Andre Deta's House of Wax, starring Vincent Price. Just a fantastic movie, absolutely amazing to watch. The looks, the visuals in that film, and of course Vincent Price. I love the effects in that film. It's a haunting movie, and just have always been a fan of it. And Vincent Price is an icon. 1960s is going to be, if people haven't guessed, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, one of the most iconic films in cinema history. Terrific screenplay by Joe Stefano, and what an amazing performance by the late great Anthony Perkins, my hero, my favorite actor. Of course, you can't say enough great things about the late great Janet Leigh. You also have John Gavin, Martin Balsam, Vera Miles. Fantastic score by Bernard Herrmann. It changed the game, man. I swear, it's still one of the most effective movies. The shower scene is still so effective when I watch it, and the movie never grows old. It's one of my favorite films of all time. 1970s should come as no surprise. Salem's Lot. Salem's Lot, in my opinion, is the best film. Of course, it came at the tail end of the 70s. I mean, the last 2 months of the 70s. Released in 1979, CBS miniseries. Still, I've said so many things about it. All I can say is that it is perfect, flawless in every way, in my opinion. Direction, acting, music, setting, everything. The effects. Barlow is the most iconic vampire, in my opinion. I know it's taken from Max Schreck's Nosferatu, but absolutely just fantastic film in every way. 1980s was tough for me. I know that we're just trying to talk about one, but I do have a runner-up. Number one for me in terms of iconic 80s film, I'm gonna have to go with Jason Lives, because it's my favorite Friday the 13th film, and it really is what cemented my love of that franchise, and that is my favorite horror franchise of all time. Tom McLaughlin wrote and directed a fantastic film. Easily, I love every Friday the 13th out. Even Jason Goes to Hell, which is my least favorite. I like it. There's things about it I like, but I think Tom McLaughlin's film is the perfect film. It's got great characters, great dialogue. It's got that tongue-in-cheek dialogue that wouldn't really come to be part of Maine's culture until Scream, which would come out, 10 years later. But it's got characters you care about. It's got a badass Jason played by the amazing C.J. Graham. My favorite portrayal of Jason, my favorite look of Jason. Cannot say enough great things about the film, the music, the setting, the fact that they actually had kids in the camp in this one. There's just so many great things about this film, and it really just plays with the Jason mythos. It's got a really dark sense of humor. Yes, the gore is tame, but the story is so strong that you overlook it, and it's still, I think, the best written Friday the 13th film ever made. Just absolutely love it. And my runner-up is going to be Psycho 2, which is, to me, the best sequel ever made, especially coming 22 years after the original. It's just such a great film, and cannot say enough great things about Anthony Perkins, his performance, and it should have gotten an Oscar. Meg Tilly, absolutely love her, still have a major crush on her. She's probably one of the first actresses that I really just had an affinity for and affection for, because she's so good in the role. They have terrific chemistry despite their issues on set, and excellently written by Tom Holland, masterfully directed by Richard Franklin. The music by Jerry Goldsmith is still the best score in my opinion. Just hands down a fantastic film, so that would be my runner-up. 90s is a little bit easier for me because there wasn't a lot of truly great films to come out of the 90s, but one of them was Candyman. Bernard Rose's Candyman, starring the amazing Tony Todd and the amazing Virginia Madsen. Still one of the scariest horror films I've ever seen. It still gives me chills when I watch it. It's absolutely fantastic. A terrific story, amazing acting. It was the first time I really took notice of Tony Todd, even though I had seen him in other films prior to that. That was the one that just made me take notice of this man who's become one of my favorite actors. And yeah, just absolutely terrifying film that still gets me every time I watch it. Just a true masterpiece. The other one I'm going to have to talk about is Blair Witch. That would be my runner-up for the 90s. I don't think enough people give the Blair Witch praise. Of course, it was a hyped film that came out when I was in film school, towards the tail end of the decade, and it still, for me, packs a punch every time I watch it. I know that we've seen countless found footage horror films in that time, but for me, it still is the best and will always be the best. It really still gets me and feels very real when I watch it. So yeah, I think they did a fantastic job on it, and it's easily one of the best films to come out of that decade. For the 2000s, the best one from, I mean, there's a lot of great horror films that came out in the 2000s, but the one that I was waiting for, that I was so happy to sit down in the theater and finally watch, was Freddy vs. Jason. A lot of people might not look at that as one of the greatest films to come out of the last decade, but for me, it was everything I wanted. It was a film that I waited literally 15 years of my life to see, and it didn't disappoint me. I absolutely love it. Ronnie, you did a great job directing it. Yeah, I was upset that Kane Hodder wasn't asked back to play Jason, but I think Ken Kirzinger did a great job. Robert Englund, of course, in his swan song as Freddy Krueger. And it's a fun movie. It's a gory movie. The last battle just makes it exactly what I wanted it to be, and I never get tired of watching it. And for the 2010s, this one was tough because there's been some truly great films that have come out of the last decade. We're coming down to the end of it, and this one was tough for me. A film that truly terrified me, and I still think is one of the best films that people don't talk about, is Sinister. Sinister is terrifying. Ethan Hawke was fantastic in that. It's such a scary, bleak movie that I think it puts, it's one of the best films to come out of Blumhouse. And it's a shame that Sinister 2, while I didn't think it was a bad film, didn't live up to what the first one was. And I think that kind of, completely derailed what could have been a very strong franchise, and another very strong horror icon being Bagul, who I think is one of the scariest monsters to come out of the last 20 years. Runner-up for me is going to be Hereditary, which I still think is one of the scariest, another of the scariest films I've ever seen in my life, and one of the best films to come out of the last 10 years. Toni Collette should have gotten an Oscar for the film. Absolutely fantastic film, and I cannot sing praises enough for that film. So that is going to be it. So that is my list of favorite of the decade's horror tag, and I'm going to tag a few people. I'm going to tag my friend Phil over at Phil's Creepy Vids, Horror Gal, my friend Susan, KweenyTodd, and then Count Fun Strange. So I hope you guys will answer the call that Sean Erschen left. Thank you so much, Sean, for tagging me in this. And like I said, I might be MIA for a while, working on my book, but I really appreciate being included in the horror community, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to watch this. So take it easy, stay scared as always. I have a Patreon page if everybody wants to help support me. The link is down below. And if you do help support me, Dracula here will get more treats, and Dracula really loves his treats. So any support that you can give me would be very, very much appreciated. Right, Drac?